Everyone, I'm back, and I wanted to talk to you about um, male domestic violence, maltreatment. And my subject is when will you hear us? And there are many stories all over the world, from state to state, coast to coast, that bring news about domestic violence. Domestic violence is a major social and health problem. Although research has documented the prevalence of sexual violence, no research has documented the parallel issues among male victims of partner violence. National Family Violence Survey, as cited in Hines and Douglas, and the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey, within any given year, 25 to 50% of all victims of physical partner violence of men. It does not seem that alarming of the numbers, because many men voices are not heard and the numbers are not accurate, because most men do not disclose the violence against them, and when they do contact authorities, the man is not taken seriously for their complaint. Most men shy away from discussing maltreatment against them because of the stigma that comes with domestic violence cases. It appears men are not supposed to feel any pain, because if they complain, it is a sign of weakness. They feel ashamed, judged, and ostracized for the stigma that surrounds abuse. However, when men do report abuse, the police officers refuse to arrest the female aggressor, ignore or dismiss the male victim. And when seeking a restraining order, judges were 13 times more likely to grant a TRO to a female plaintiff than when requested by a male plaintiff. Men suffer a substantial minority of physical injuries, between 25 and 43%. I argue there is not enough services available to male victims, and there is too much stigma, bias, and stereotype attitudes that prevent male victims from receiving due justice when they have been subjected to male domestic violence. And see, there's various types of violence and statistics. To sum up the types of domestic violence that takes place within family units, research shows 611 men were surveyed and experienced a physical partner from their female partners and sought help. The various forms of partner violence are sexual aggression, 28% severe sexual aggression, punching, beating up, controlling behaviors, and severe psychological aggression at the hands of their female partners. In one study, 302 men sustained physical partner violence from their female partner, sought help. 96.0 and 93.4% of the men reportedly sustained severe psychological, intimate partner violence and controlling behaviors. 28.9% acts of severe psychological partner violence and 42.6% acts of controlling behaviors. 100% of men reportedly sustained physical partner violence of beating up and punching. 90.4% sustained severe physical intimate partner violence. 54.0% sustaining life-threatening physical partner violence. 80% of participants were injured, and 77.5% sustained minor injury, and 35.1% sustained a severe injury. The male help seekers reported they were injured 11.7 times the previous year of 46.7% acts. 7.2% of the men reported that since the age of 16, where they were pressured or forced to have sexual contact. 80% of the perpetrators were acquaintances or lovers, and intercourse, oral, vaginal, or anal, occurred in 39% of the incidents. 62% verbal pressure was used. 9% physically harmed or threatened. 29% endured a combination of harm, threats, and verbal abuse. 1.4% of men reported lifetime experiences of rape, forced anal penetration. 4.8% reported being made to penetrate someone, made to have sexual intercourse without consent. 6.0% reported sexual coercion, and 11.7% reported unwanted sexual contact, and 12% reported non-contact unwanted sexual experiences. 79.2% of the perpetrator were women. Overall, the NISVS in a lifetime, approximately 8% of men, 9 million. And in the preceding year, 2.5% of men, which is 2.8 million, have experienced some form of sexual aggression from an intimate partner. Very few studies have investigated the predictors and correlations of women's stalking of current or former male partners. However, the NVAWS found that 2% of men in the United States have been stalked at some point in their lives, which projected 2,040,460 during their lifetimes and annually in the United States. At the macrosystem level, the BCS found that men who do not have a degree or diploma were at greater risk of being stalked by a current or former intimate than those who do, and men that were separated were likely to be stalked. Hines writes, a final source of data comes from the National Intimate Partner Sexual Violence Survey that 25.7% of men reported slapping, pushing, or shoving in the past year, and 13.8% reported past year severe physical IPV victimization of hair pulling, hit with fists, beating, burning, and choking. When looking at this data, it would be appropriate to assume there are male victims that are subjected to physical, psychological, and emotional aggression that should be addressed and referrals made to the appropriate agencies and court system. In addition, it should be mandated when police reports are filed. It should be noted in the documentation of domestic dispute. Intimate partner violence. A few years ago, when a male family member was subjected to a female physical assault, he tried to protect himself and restrain the aggressor from physical abuse. The children in the home called the authorities, and they both were arrested, taken to jail, and held in a jail cell so they could cool off overnight. They were held for 24 hours and released on their own recognizance. However, it was clear the female was the aggressor after speaking to her over the phone, which she admitted she got angry and started hitting the male partner. When it comes to who initiated the violence, 53.1% of the women reported hitting first compared to 42.3% who reported their male partner initiated. The male family member still has a scar on top of his head from the female partner using a weapon to harm him. Hines writes, it should be noted that some studies suggest that men are likely or perhaps more likely than women to be assaulted with a weapon. When family members advised him to leave, he stayed for a while longer, but eventually left on his own, and the female aggressor moved out of state. Either situation, whether police arrest, both parties involved in a domestic dispute between heterosexual intimates, or solely the involved female raises concerns of equity and efficacy in the implementation of mandatory arrest policies. When looking at the situation of an human services professional, the female aggressor should have been held due to the children informing the police officers their mother was the aggressor, initiated the encounter, and was asked on numerous times to stop the behavior. When the male victim tried ignoring the female aggressor, it only made her angrier, which should have been taken into consideration at the time of the discussion with the police officers. Socioeconomic oppression. The most widely macrosystem level predictor of maltreatment of male partners concerns socioeconomic status. In the macrosystem, you will find male unemployment, low income of both partners, and when the female partner is employed, create stressors in the microsystem systems such as victimization of a child, mental health, and alcohol-related problems. In the ecosystem, there is neighborhood poverty. In the microsystem, characteristics of cohabited relationships. Researchers have shown relationship conflict, communication problems, the dominance of the female partner, and the female partner having a negative view of their male partner. Furthermore, when men are not able to provide for their families, they are more subjected to economic stressors that could bring on frustration and isolation within the family. Because men are considered the head of the household, it adds to already stressors and problems in the family unit. Paul writes, but I would have you know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God. 1 Corinthians 11, verse 3. Anxious attachment style. Several studies under the individual developmental predictors of maltreatment of male partners Women who use restrictive engulfment psychological maltreatment tend to display anxious and insecure attachments. Another family member suffered abuse at the hands of his daughter's mother, another female aggressor, which shows the same behaviors under the anxious and insecure attachment. Those involved used hostile withdrawal psychological maltreatment, were cold, vindictive, and domineering, and or may have suffered from separation protest. They tend to suffer from separation protest and compulsive care seeking, and those who use dominance, intimidation also suffer from separation protest, as cited in Hines. These indicators suggest there could be a loss of control with the aggressor. The female aggressor has seen this type of aggression in her family, and it could be genetically influenced. When evidence is shown and proven that male victims are subjected to female aggression and inflict psychological maltreatment because of anxious and insecure attachment styles, there needs to be further studies, research, and methods that can be developed. Furthermore, female aggressors should be accountable for their actions and sanctioned just as men are sanctioned for their aggressions. Lack of treatment. When it comes to treatment for male victims, there needs to be more training that is adequately equipped to persuade law enforcement to take male victim complaints and concerns seriously. There needs to be more services that are adequately equipped to assist and provide services that will serve male victims without bias, prejudice, and discrimination. According to the feminist theory, men cannot be victimized by women in a society which men are dominant. Dobash and Dobash. Most men in a study found that only 23% contacted the domestic violence hotline. 68.7% found it not helpful, and 7.5% found the resource very helpful, and some men were told the hotline only helped women. In addition, when male victims contacted domestic violence agencies, less than 10% found the agency helpful, while 65.2% found it was not helpful at all, were biased, and suggested the men were the batterer. Hines writes, studies of male victims in the criminal justice system typically show that male victims are not helped by the system. As human service professionals, to better assess the systems and agencies in place, I would like to see bias and sensitivity training that should be mandated and required in all agencies, law enforcement, and in the National Domestic Hotline when filtering out those calls. Moreover, more male employees should be hired with specialized skills to further assist in helping. We cannot assume that men are the aggressors in every domesticated or intimate partner violence. There should be due process in all domestic violence cases, and no alleged victim should be judged or falsely accused of being the batterer. This is clearly disturbing that employees suggest a male victim is accused of being a batterer without some type of investigation of the incident. Furthermore, domestic violence should be monitored to make sure proper protocols are being followed. In addition, a survey should be sent out to the caller to complete to gather information of the service or lack of service provided or received. I would like to be involved in updating, amending, creating, and changing laws that will be fair to ensure all victims that end up in the domestic violence system will be treated fairly, especially male victims. I contend that every society views women as the weaker partner in domestic relationships, and men are the stronger ones. So until the bias and stereotypical attitudes are changed, men will continue to be subjected to lesser services and not viewed as the victim. And I just want to cite my references. K. Henning and Federer, A Comparison of Men and Women Arrested for Domestic Violence. Who Presents the Greater Threat? Journal of Family Violence. D.A. Hines and Douglas, Sexual Aggression Experiences Among Male Victims of Physical Partner Violence, Prevalence, Severity, and Health Correlates for Male Victims and Their Children. Archives of Sexual Behavior. Hines and Malley Morrison and Dutton, Family Violence in the United States, Defining, Understanding, and Combating Abuse. S.C. Hill, Phone Conversation about Domestic Violence Altercation. And H.J. Muller and Damaris, S.L. Damaris, and J.M. Hamill, Do Judicial Response to Restraining Order Requests Discriminate Against Male Victims of Domestic Violence? Journal of Family Violence. Thank you for your time.